Yeah.
I mean, firstly, starting off, Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira at UFC 262.
Yeah.
I just finished watching the countdown today. I don't know if you have, but
About halfway through.
it's damn good, and I like that the main and the Kona main event is tied together.
Yeah.
And the main ingredient is Charles Oliveira and Tony Ferguson because they've already fought before, and this is kind of, it was kind of that fight, Charles Oliveira versus Tony Ferguson, that kind of they've diverted paths. Charles Oliveira has continued his win streak and has got his he's able to get his first step towards the UFC lightweight title, and then on the other end of the spectrum, Tony Ferguson is actually increased his losing streak and is now fighting Beneil Dariush, and if he's to lose, then he's on a 3-fight losing skid, and that's where there's questions on whether is this the same El Kukui that everyone fell in love with? Is he, a lot of people are quite easy to be really excited about Tony when he's doing well and think he's the boogeyman, he's insane. And look at all his fights. Look how fucked up his opponents all are, right? Look at their faces. They're all bloody and look at him. And then as soon as he starts losing, that's when everyone starts going, oh, he's stupid. Look at his training footage, he's an idiot, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, you said this really, really well when we were watching fights. Like, everyone loves you when you're on top, but then you lose one, everyone, like, abandons you.
Or they just question you. Yeah. Like, the same thing happens in boxing,
Look what happened to between Billy Joel Sanders and Canelo Alvarez. Now, all of a sudden, Billy Joel Sanders has lost his title. Orbital won't, so
I don't think that. That's good. Like, is exactly what combat fans do. As soon as there's an unbeatable kind of aura around someone until they lose, and then that's when the doubt creeps in and things like that. The same thing happened with Conor when he lost to Nate Diaz, and everyone went, "Oh, no, he's just terrible on the floor. He's an average fighter." And that's when a lot of doubt creeps in for most fighters. And you can say the same thing about George Foreman. After George Foreman lost to Muhammad Ali, everyone said about him, does he have the skills to bounce back? Does he? And he used to be the proper boogeyman, the one-punch knockout power. Wasn't as skilled as everyone else, but he had that one-hitter quitter Francis Ngannou power that just turned people's lights out. But then as soon as he lost, it was like, oh, he's not as talented. He doesn't have the skill set as another one. Does he actually have the skills of a proper good boxer? Does he know the sweet science to actually? And that's when the doubt creeps in, And I can say the same for Tony Ferguson. When we go back to Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira, really, it wasn't that long ago Charles Oliveira wasn't on a good skid in the UFC.
The thing is, one thing I just got to bring up real quick, when it came to the countdown, did you notice how they just show footage from the Dan Hooker fight?
Yeah.
They don't show any other footage or how good he is back in Bellator. But you're right about Charles Oliveira, because it wasn't long ago when he was on that losing streak, but he hasn't lost in 4 years. His last loss was to Paul Felder. Since then, he's slowly climbed his way back up the charts. And for Chandler, he lost to to Pitbull, which was back in May of 2019. So they both had significant amounts of wins from there. But the reason why, a lot of people are questioning this title match in particular is because Charles Oliveira has gone on something like a phenomenal winning streak, but Chandler gets one fight in the UFC, even though he's on a 4-fight winning streak, and all of a sudden he gets to fight for the title. Again, I understand where the question really is right there, but in terms of in terms of resume, we can't doubt Chandler, because even though he's from Bellator, some of the fighters who he goes up against in Bellator are still that high caliber. For example, Benson Henderson, who was a former lightweight champion. So again, it's about, really, it's an argument of who deserves this more, who really deserves this more. Safe to say, if Michael Chandler wins, however, my money's on Oliveira. If Michael Chandler wins, then he's going to have to be ready for an absolute what is the Shark Tank of the lightweight division, because for example, everyone's got eyes on Gagey. Where does he sit in all this mess?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Michael Chandler hasn't got experience. He certainly has, and it's not like he hasn't fought UFC caliber fighters. He has. Benson Henderson, Eddie Alvarez come to mind, right? These top stars in the UFC lightweight division. It's just that, unfortunately, Charles Oliveira has way more experience in the UFC, particularly, than Michael Chandler, and I certainly subscribe to the idea that the UFC are the pinnacle of, elite MMA. Now there is some crossover in certain promotions, but I definitely subscribe to the fact that Charles Oliveira has a lot of UFC caliber experience. And that's what makes this fight very interesting, because they not only do they have a lot of experience, they both have a high finishing rate as well. Charles Oliveira comes to mind because he's got about 70% of his wins by submission, with his amazing submission rate. He's very, very good at grappling, incredibly good.
I think he holds the record for most submission wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he holds a 90 across. It's a 90% finish rate.
Yes.
So it's very high up there. And that's all. Whenever you get two people that have a fairly high finish rate, that typically means it's gonna be a banger fight. It's not gonna be some low, sluggish, bland fight. These people are gonna go to war, especially when there's a vacant title on the line.
Yeah.
Look, to be honest, I do favour Charles Oliveira just because of the amount of experience he's got in the UFC particularly, and Charles Oliveira, he's got more experience than Michael. Michael is very good, but like he said, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time, right? And that's because he spent a lot of his career in Bellator now, and he's only now at his age being able to transition to the UFC.
Yeah.
Is exactly what he wants, to quickly transition from one fight, a top 5 fight, straight into title contention. That's what he wants, because he's on time. The only issue is time is on Charles' side.
Yeah.
He's at being able to accrue a lot more experience. He's got very, very good jiu-jitsu. At the same time, though, a lot of the time he's very. It doesn't really matter where you put Charles Oliveira. He can submit you off his back.
Yeah.
He's got a nasty guillotine. He's done standing guillotines, for fuck's sake. And then Michael Chandler, he's got incredible power, but he's a very, very good wrestler.
Yeah. He trains a lot with Kamaru
Usman. Watching them doing his wrestling transitions with Kamaru Usman, you would be very, very impressed how smooth and the flow rate that he has when he's wrestling with someone who's as big as Kamaru, who's much noticeably bigger and taller than him. I think Michael can take Charles down.
Yeah.
I think he can.
But
he certainly has a higher takedown average than Charles. Charles does not really take people down.
But that's the thing. If I agree with you, Michael definitely can take him down. But on the ground, I believe on the ground, Charles Oliveira will just beat him. Because if you look at Charles Oliveira's BJJ pedigree, he submitted Tony Ferguson. He nearly submitted Tony Ferguson with that armbar, and he made it literally look easy.
I think another 10 seconds,
Yeah.
even Tony would have had to tap.
Yeah, correct.
Or it would have just gave.
Yeah. But let's just look at the reality of what's going on. So you got Charles Oliveira. He's 31 years old. He had a bad loss to Paul Felder, TKO by elbow, second round. Since then, you go completely undefeated. You're 31. You go 4 more years in the UFC, in the biggest division of all time. And then you get the guy who just comes in, has one fight, So
you're saying that Charles Oliveira's last fight was his loss to Paul Felder? Yes?
Yeah, well, I was just saying, I'm just looking at the reality here. Here's why. It's not really about what I want. It's just the way it seems like in terms of like a better headline for what's fair. Because I feel like a lot of the people who are diehard fans of the UFC will want to turn to the Oliveira side, because his story is a lot more. It's a lot more of an underdog story of a guy who came back from everything. And besides, Michael Chandler just comes in, has one fight, all of a sudden gets a title, takes it off a kid who's I've taken this off a guy who's been fighting years and years and years, because then again, you know, if he just comes in and takes it off him, then, and he's also, if you don't forget, Michael Chandler's 35.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too far. Between 32 and 35 is around your prime in terms of MMA. It is significant that you've brought up the Felder loss, because he tapped the strikes. Paul Felder made him quit.
Yeah.
And it's not very often that people tap the strikes, to be honest. It's not a common thing in the UFC. Strange enough, Tito Ortiz comes to mind. But you know, it's not a common thing. Now, that would be considered to most MMA fighters probably a little bit embarrassing. You're not tapping to a submission, you're tapping to strikes, you know? It's not a doctor stoppage, it's not the ref stopping the fight. Mm-hmm. You stop the fight. You tapped, you quit, right? And that's not to say it's a crack on his mentality or anything like that. That's not true. What I'm saying is, for him personally, that was probably embarrassing, right? Not for us. Don't think that about him at all. But he personally probably thinks it's embarrassing, which is why it seems like it made a change, right? And those next 4 years, you're telling me he didn't lose a single fight for 4 years, and he's accrued such a the amount of fighters he's got across his win streak. They range, and that's what gives a good idea to me, because Michael Chandler only has one fight for us to go off, and it was quite short. It didn't go for the full 3 rounds. Charles Oliveira, you know, we've seen a lot more time in the cage, despite him having a pretty low amount of time. On average, he only spends like 6.5 minutes in the cage, which would be just a minute. 1 round and a little bit. He's a finisher. That's what he does.
I haven't asked you this, but who do you think's going to win, and how are they going to win?
I think Charles will beat Chandler.
Okay. Yep.
And it's probably not so more important what I think that's going to happen. It's more important what Charles thinks. Oliveira has said, I'm going to fucking knock him out. And he thinks he's going to knock him out in the first round. Would history suggest that Charles could do it? On his end, yes. In terms of Michael Chandler, I think he's got a solid chin. There have been points in fights where he's been rocked and he's recovered. It's tough. It's a really tough choice, because I feel like Chandler could knock out a lot of people in the 155. I don't know if he could. That's the issue. The issue is also, he's fought Dan Hooker, and there was even larger height difference between him and Hooker than there are Charles and Michael now. So you can't. So that's not a huge argument for why he probably can't land the big punch. I just think Olivia's shootboxing skills are just very high up there. The more amount of time he spent with Diego Lima sharpening his tools, the better he's got at finishing fights outside of submitting. And I think that is significant as well. I think Oliveira, I think he could submit Chandler.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was going to predict a round 2 submission. Something about that round 2, man. The amount
that's true. The amount of people that are losing in round 2. I would say maybe
that round 2 is so dangerous.
I'm gonna say round 3.
Round 3.
I'm gonna say round 3. I think round 3, just solely because I think Chandler might even just give Oliveira the first round.